Welcome to our Limitless Selling webinar. My name is Hillary Murdoch. I head up our product marketing team here at 3Kit, and super excited to bring this to you today. Lots of good content. I think we'll have lots to mull over, hopefully some good questions, and it'll be a good time. Just some housekeeping things here. We've got a Q&A. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, go ahead and plug them, type them into the Q&A. I'll be keeping track of those, and then we'll be able to address them at the end. I'll farm them out to the appropriate person to answer. So go ahead and keep an eye on that. And then additionally, if for whatever reason you can't make it the whole time, or want to share this content with other folks within your organization or peers, we're going to be sending it out. We're recording it after the fact. Don't necessarily feel like you have to take copious notes. You're going to get a recording of this as well. So be looking forward to that. So to get us kicked off, Limitless Selling, this is, our guide for you product managers out there, marketing folks, e-commerce folks, digital transformers, on getting configurable, customizable products to market. I think smart people know that customization and configuration when it comes to products of all types is really the future, and also delivering that experience in a way that resonates with your shoppers, gets them engaged, gets them to convert. And then on the back end, of course, there are ramifications for that, right? And there are certain challenges to overcome. And that's really what we wanted to address here, both those challenges that everyone's facing with configuration, but also how to overcome them. So we brought two of the best here today to share this with you. Our presenters are Ash Zaid. He is our VP of Product Management, heads up our product team here at 3Kit, and Tony Lopez, our sales engineering extraordinaire. And they are definitely the two best positioned to bring this to you all. A real quick overview of what we're going to be going through. Again, those top challenges of getting configurable products to market, a few customer success stories to bring that to life and really crystallize it for you. Then, of course, you'll get a peek inside the platform and how we actually enable these experiences. And then a little bit on, what it takes to really get started, what your next steps coming out of this will be. So it'll all be actionable. So with that, without further ado, I will hand it over to Ash to get us started.
Cool. Thank you, Hillary. So why don't we start with the first challenge? We're talking about product configuration today. So what is configuration? So configuration is all the ways your customers can purchase your product. And you'll see an example here on the right, Lovesac, one of my favorite stories here, where configuration means a lot of things. Configuration means picking the appropriate fabrics, picking the fills, actually assembling the product yourself, physical space. And so configuration has a lot of different layers here. And then the added complexity is, how do you reflect those configurations from the materials and finishes to the spatial positioning? How do you even show your customers in real time? Well, let's talk about how we do it in 3Kit. We have a robust set of rules and logic, and they're layered. So what we've done in 3Kit is we've separated out the product rules. So here are all the products we sell. Here are all their options, in this case, fabric options. And then we have our visual rules. So when someone selects this option, what should happen in the visual space? Well, we should apply this material. If someone clicks and drags this piece, what should happen? This is like physics-based, complicated stuff. Well, you should only be able to move it on the floor. And if it gets next to a piece, they should snap together like magnets. And to go on a little bit of a tangential story about the magnets, what we did is, with Lovesac specifically, we looked at their in-store experience, and then we translated it to a better experience online. So with in-store experience, a Lovesac customer would go in, they had wooden blocks representing the different components of their sofa with magnets built into them, and they would arrange in person their sofa. And what we did is we took that, we digitized it. So in physical space, you can drag around the pieces and they snap together just like real magnets. And then we enhanced it by giving Lovesac customers the ability to see every single option in real time as they selected it. And what that was able to achieve for Lovesac is, one, a self-serve experience, that can be maintained through a platform. And you'll see a GIF here of the experience. So rules, physics, customer data, catalog data, visual data, physics, all of it's managed in one platform with no code. And then also their customers get an enhanced experience of being able to self-serve, build a product themselves, have access to every option in real time, and have access to their accessories as well. So with a configuration problem, the solution is to represent all the different layers in one system, and that can be managed centrally. But with complex configuration, there is another problem, and that's a skew problem. So Tony, tell us about the skew problem.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ash. So the skew dilemma, what even really is a skew, right? Skews are everywhere. Everyone knows what skews are, and skews are great. Skews work very, very well if, for example, selling t-shirts, I might have 5 or 10 shirts. They might come in 5 sizes. I might have 5 or 10 materials. It's not a ton of SKUs, just a few dozen SKUs. And if I get a few more t-shirts or a few more colors next year, not a lot of maintenance, not a lot of effort to actually create those new SKUs and support that type of product. But we all know that products can be much more configurable, much more customizable than that. And our traditional systems, our PIMs to our e-commerce, even our selling tools like our CRMs and whatever opportunity management, those product catalogs, those e-commerce catalogs are going to be very flat in nature. And that's going to require me to create a SKU for any sellable item. And it makes sense, again, if I'm going from a one-to-one relationship from PIM to CRM to order management to e-commerce and to a shopping cart. But again, that's going to be very limiting. Just take very simply the chair that we're all sitting in right now. It can have 10 different arm styles. It can have 10 different headrests. It can have 10 different casters or wheels or gliders. And even that right there, that's already 1,000 different sellable combinations of just the physical chair. But now I add in 1,000 fabrics. I've all of a sudden hit 1 million different combinations of just a single chair. Spread that across an entire catalog of dozens, if not hundreds of actual chairs and products. I've got hundreds of millions, if not billions of permutations. Some of our customers even into the trillions and even quintillions of permutations. And of course, by no means is there any way to support that from a simple SKU structure standpoint. Again, not only the creation of those millions of SKUs, but what am I going to do with all of that data? I might sell 20 of those chairs. What happens to the other 999,980 SKUs? It's a lot of overhead. It's a lot of waste. It's certainly impractical and certainly very difficult to maintain. So how do we solve that? It's actually what Ash was talking about, right? It's configuration. So we want to take those roles, we want to take those attributes, and we want to turn it into an actual configurator so that the user can dynamically build up whatever it is that they want and really represent exactly how your products can be sold and how you want to sell them. Just taking a customer example of ours, they sold vanities and sink cabinets and the sink countertop that goes on top of it. And when we were trying to size that project out, we asked for the number of products and the customer reacted, well, we can't even begin to count. We've got tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of SKUs already. And that hardly represents even a fraction of what we can sell. And I said, that's great. We didn't really want the number of SKUs. We literally want the number of physical things that you can sell. So when we actually started to peel back that onion and kind of decompose everything into just the physical sellable components, it ended up being about 140 things, right? Again, it's just a few different vanities. Those come in a few different sizes. They might have a few dozen different wood stains and finishes. Then you put the sink on top of it. And the sink can have very many different materials and marbles and quartzes and corians and colors. Then you put the fixture on top of it. And then you put the mirror on top of that, on top of the wall with the lights. And so again, it was really just a couple of hundred of individual products with a lot of options. But as you begin to cycle through all of those different combinations, you get into the millions pretty quickly. And even here, what we're looking at on the screen, just taking a very simple cabinet example. Again, the idea is not to build out or model or take images of those hundreds, thousands, millions of individual pieces. Again, what we want to do is decompose everything into its individual physical components, basically the extent to which you can actually configure something. So here I have the different storage styles with a door, with 2 drawers, with 3 drawers, a few different handle types, a few different wood finishes, and you can see, right, as the user begins to configure, we want to see the corresponding visual as well. So we're no longer losing out on the customer experience by limiting what they can even configure. We're no longer limiting what we can sell and taking away from that customer experience. And to speak again to those different types of experiences, I'll pass it back to Ash.
Thanks, Tony. So we've looked at removing limits or limitless configuration, limitless SKUs. The next challenge here is the customer expectations when it comes to the product experience. So how do you deliver the experiences that will drive conversion, customer loyalty, reducing returns? We've already explained how you can show your entire catalog off, but what about the experience itself? Well, the answer is it's not really about any one experience. The answer is a variety of experiences. And so with 3Kit, the way we look at it is when you invest and you build your products in 3Kit system, we want to maximize the value you can get from it by allowing you to generate 1, 2, 3, as many different types of experiences as you can. And on screen, you'll see we have real-time 3D or interactive 3D, as you saw with Lovestack. You'll see augmented reality in the bottom left. We have virtual photographer that we've shown on slides before. And we're looking forward thinking too, right? So metaverse, NFTs, there are going to be new experiences, new technologies that come along. And what you want to do is be in a position where you can take advantage of those types of experiences day one. And what we found is by combining these experiences, and you'll see some metrics on the slide now, you can actually push the buyer journey forward. And so I'll give you a tangible example. We have a customer who sells art. They commission art or buy art from artists and then sell them exclusively on their website. So this is wall art, which is very popular from working from home. Everyone needs an interesting background when they're on these kind of Zoom calls. And so what we helped there was not only visualize their entire catalog online, but to help the buyer move along in the journey, you take that product and the customer can view it in their space and place it exactly on their wall to see not only the sizing, but does it actually match the rest of their decor? And so what we did is we combined experiences. We have virtual photographer, we have real-time 3D and augmented reality used together to create this buyer journey. And you'll see the statistics on the screen, and there's more. Increases, significant increases in conversion, significant increases in average order value. When customers can customize products, when they can personalize, when they can engage and make it their own, they're more likely to spend more. And when you give them a variety of experiences, they get the best view of a product, the most accurate view. So when they receive the product, not only are they happier, they're less likely to return. And I know I've mentioned a few times, but these are like key metrics here. You drive conversion, you increase your average order value, you have happier customers, more loyal customers, and less returns by combining these three concepts we spoke about. But instead of speaking, Tony, why don't we look at a live example of a traditional experience and a 3Kit powered experience?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ash. So first, we'll just take a look at TaylorMade. We'll flip over to their actual website here in a second. But TaylorMade, they're not always selling customizable, fully customizable golf clubs. Sometimes they do have, right, again, that traditional SKU approach, those actual stock items. And so what we see here from, again, just that traditional product detail page, I've got my standard image carousel. I've got a few images there on the left-hand side. But again, when it comes to standard e-commerce product catalogs and product detail pages, very limited in the number of actual variants that I can reflect on that PDP. So we can see that over on the top right-hand side with just a few options that are reflected. But then even if I want to go into a custom experience, how do we support that with potential customization on the e-commerce? So let's actually take a look at what TaylorMade is doing. So again, here, this is the same golf club that we were taking a look at a second ago on the slide, but let's just actually walk through what we see here. Again, very traditional e-commerce page, simple product carousel, or excuse me, product image carousel here, and just those few standard images. But even when it comes to some of the very simple configuration, right, I actually have a 10.5 degree loft, but you can see here on the image, it's actually still showing 9. So even from a user standpoint, from a customer standpoint, right, am I really 100% certain that I am in fact configuring the correct product? When it comes to TaylorMade, they also have a customization, and this is for the majority of their actual golf clubs, right? So as I work my way through, again, I've got a few more options to configure here. I can see the images do reflect a little bit more closely what the user has actually selected with my Fujikura Ventus shaft kind of image preview here, and then ultimately getting to the final step here with everything kind of grouped together, but still, limited in the customer experience there. What we want to do from a full customization standpoint is, again, get beyond, really what the traditional e-commerce systems are going to allow me to do, which again, very minimal variants, very minimal options from a product detail page standpoint. So now we're actually looking at partnership that we have with TaylorMade with 3Kit, of course, providing the visuals here. So what we actually have on the website is an embedded 3D player, right? So it's no longer just static images that only represent a few angles or perspectives of the product, but we actually want to see the full golf club itself and all of the individual configurable elements. And then again, even here, right, we can see going back to my example a second ago, I've got my 10.5 degree loft there. And of course, if I change it to 9, we want to see the corresponding 9. Not sure how well we can see that in this Zoom, but again, these are all live websites. We saw a question there in the chat. We absolutely will share all of these links with you. You can, of course, also just go to folks like Lovesac and Crate and Barrel and now TaylorMade and probably find these yourselves. But then when it comes to the configuration as well, not a ton of color options. In years past, the previous sim drivers were actually much more configurable. But even here, we still see very many thousands of different combinations, even just from the color standpoint. And so again, when it comes to user experience, certainly far more enhanced than just those static images. Even as I begin to make my selections, right, we know exactly what's being configured. As I move around to different areas on the club, we'll notice that the camera orientation actually changes. So there's no question of where am I even making these changes to. So again, we can see all of these in real time, all of the changes occurring. And again, always readjusting the camera perspective. And then again, just to further enhance that user experience, I've got a few different options here that I can cycle through, again, and changing that camera perspective. So as I work my way through, we don't have to finish the full configuration with the shaft and the grip as well. But as I work my way through, again, I can see all of my configuration. Everything is there in a much more user-friendly, very intuitive, improved user experience. And to that effect, TaylorMade actually saw tremendous success with their full customizer club here. They actually hit their 3-month sales goal in just 1 month, and saw huge growth and increased conversions with the full customizer here. So again, that's just one example of one of our customers and customer success. I'll hand it back to Ash. You can talk us through a couple others.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. What I want to point out here is make it a distinction here where we see the same success stories for B2C and B2B customers. In fact, our B2B customers tell us that the customer expectations have narrowed between B2B and B2C. They're more similar than they are different. Those B2B buyers are you and I. They're online. They have been for the last 2 years buying more than ever before. They're exposed to these immersive experiences, and they're asking why they can't get the same when they're at work, when they are buying building materials. And so we're seeing a huge drive from the B2B sector to adopt limitless configuration, product customization, the self-serve, the product rule validity, the real-time pricing, everything that goes into a B2B experience, but also with the real-time visuals. And you'll see here again, some metrics here for our B2C and B2B customers. And what's key here is they do it all with the same platform. So there's no differentiation between complexity, simple, whether it's furniture, building materials, luxury goods. And what we should do, Tony, let's take a look at the platform that powers these experiences.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ash. So without further ado, we've covered certainly the challenges typically that go into any configuration problem, not just from SKUs, but how do I rationalize everything down into a system of rules and attributes? How do I input all that into an actual configuration tool and then ultimately put that somewhere on the website for end users and customers to actually interact with? So to that effect, and as Ash was mentioning, we saw a lot of different user experiences, but everything is built the same way on the same 3-kit. So none of our customers have anything extra. There's nothing available to 3-kit that our customers also don't have access to. So let's actually walk through that here. And that's precisely what we're looking at is, again, the 3-kit platform. I've got a demo environment here with some demo products that we'll walk through and kind of recap what we were looking at on the previous slides. So first things first, I've got my entire asset library here. I've got a few different products, very simple, again, demo org here. I've only got a few products, but we'll maybe stick to my my folder here with just some products for my media cabinet. I'm not going to actually create an asset, but I'm just going to click on this button here so we can see the different types of assets that we're working with. Of course, folders for organization purposes, but scenes, right? This is where I'm going to set up my camera angles. We saw the different cameras kind of moving around with the tailor-made configurator, but also my lighting elements. Is it indoor? Is it outdoor? Do I have leather furniture versus maybe something metallic? So do I want to decrease or increase the intensity of my light so that it's not too reflective? Then, of course, all of the models. The models are going to be determined by, again, what the actual physical products we selling are. And we'll take a look at some decomposed models. Right, it's going to be the actual sellable product, but then also the individual parts and components that go into it. And then, of course, right, what are all the materials, the things to actually bring it to life? So I've got my materials, and canvas is what we're calling textures. So right, all of my different image swatches that again actually bring to life those products. So giving it then those tactile elements, the look and feel, different textures, different reflections, different colors, different designs. We're handling all of that with digital materials. So let's actually walk through and take a look at what I mean by all of that. Here you can see these are my individual parts that go into the cabinet. We'll take a look at the end result here in a second. So we're kind of building our way up to it. But again, here I've got just a few different storage options with a 2-drawer, 3-drawer option, a couple of door options. And then you'll notice the handles and the knobs are not connected to it, of course, because we want to, again, be able to configure down even to that level. Corresponding to my individual components and parts are going to be my materials. And so in this case, I've got just these 4 simple wood finishes. So again, the idea is I want to reduce everything down to, again, just the lowest common denominator of to what extent is your product sellable. That's the extent to which we want to, again, kind of decompose everything. But we want to, of course, build everything back up. And so how do we do that? We've been talking a lot about attributes. We've been talking a lot about configuration. So 3-kit, we want to create all of those inputs, right? These are the actual buttons that users ultimately are going to be clicking. But those buttons, of course, need to have a corresponding visual change. So what do we mean by that? We've got our standard input types that you're normally going to interact with on any kind of configuration form online. But we also have something unique that we're calling an asset reference. And so what that means is, as we were just looking on the previous tabs, I have a library of those individual parts. Here, for example, I got handle style. Let's try storage style. Again, I had a library of those individual 2-drawer, 3-drawer, and the standalone doors. But I want to actually have a system of attributes that references all of those parts dynamically, and then correspondingly, the attributes to reference all the materials as well. So how do we actually, what does that look like when we bring everything together? Here's a little preview. So here again is the cabinet. We saw that previously on one of the slides. We had that GIF. But here again, we see the full finished product. So here again are those attributes that we were just looking at on the previous tab. But inside of my attributes, right, we're actually populating that with those options, those standalone components. And we've got, again, the 3-drawer option. Let's cycle through a couple more options here. 2-drawer, 3-drawer, a couple door options. Again, we've got a few different handle options with the different pulls, the different knobs. Then, of course, all of my different finishes as well. So what does that look like from an actual end result? Well, again, we take all of those inputs, we take all of the options, we take all of the attributes that I'm configuring in 3-kit, and then we actually want to expose that full configuration experience representing all of the different options, but again, with more of a branded look and feel that we actually want to put on a website, but also still maintaining all of the rules and logic that we've configured. So any dependencies in that configuration and any of the rules that we've configured that govern how a user can and cannot configure your products, we of course want all that to persist through to an actual e-commerce store. And so here again, as I work my way through, we of course see the changes to material. We've got even granularly down, I can configure just the metal or the finish of the knob there. We'll zoom in a little so you can see it a little more closely. And then of course, again, right, actually swapping out for those individual components and ultimately the door, or I should say storage style as well. You'll notice a couple of things going on. So from a 3-kit standpoint, Ash had mentioned this earlier, we do have those 3 experiences. So another reason to show this one is we've got all 3 on the same page where I've got my embedded 3D. I've got the photorealistic 2D renders as well, what we call virtual photographer. So again, I've got close-ups, different angles. I've even got some lifestyle images here. And of course, as I make changes, right, we want to see that change reflect in the images themselves as well. So again, from a configuration standpoint, we're no longer limited to, again, just a few options. We're no longer limited to having to pre-create all of those SKUs. Again, what 3-kit wants to do is capture all of the configuration details. And from this, we know exactly what options the user has created. So I can do a number of things. I can dynamically create my SKU as I go through a configuration experience. Or I can potentially create multiple line items for building out an entire bill of materials. If I have, for example, different line items for the classic pool versus the individual little knob there. If I wanted to, again, turn this into multiple line items or a custom SKU, the key is 3-kit is capturing all the configuration detail so we know precisely what the user has configured. So with that, I will hand it over again to Ash. We'll do a little recap and retrace our steps here.
Thanks for that walkthrough, Tony. I know we've gone through a lot today and fairly quickly, so I want to take a second, slow down a bit, recap some of the things we've gone over and some things we haven't yet. And you'll see here challenges we've categorized kind of in four buckets here. First, obviously, there's revenue challenges. I've spoken to those. We find those are driven by the fact that our customers, before they come to 3-kit, can't show off everything they sell. So immediately you have a revenue or conversion problem if you can't show every product you sell. And then, as I mentioned, there are certain products that you just can't sell online, specifically with traditional photography. There are certain products that require the customer to engage, to build, and to customize. And traditional photography does not work. And we saw an example of kind of the before with Taylor made where they got really far with traditional photography. And when you put it side by side with an interactive, real-time, configurable experience, it's kind of a no-brainer there. Then there are the business challenges. The ones no one likes to talk about, but this is SKUs we've honed in on today. How do you take a system, a limited system built around SKUs? And by that, I mean traditional commerce platforms where it's a flat list, it's SKU-based. There's a lot of effort and energy put into representing every individual SKU in a list. And then on the client side, where you actually show off the products, you're limited by that same system. It's a flat, rigid system where you are dependent on a SKU list. And we unlock that, we remove those limits by putting the focus more on the product and the ways you can configure it, and then the SKU comes after the fact. Then there's the visual component. Now you've represented all your products data-wise, then there's the visuals. And visuals, as we said, there's a variety of experiences. On our end, it's one investment. The 3D and the art is actually the easiest part of this problem. That's why it's number 3 here. It's one of the easier parts of the problem to solve. You can get those visual assets generated fairly quickly. But now it's to take those visual assets and couple it with your product data. And once you've done that, what can you do with it? Well, as we've said, this isn't about one experience, this is about many, and many in the future as well. And then finally, the configuration challenge. We have all the rules, all the products defined, all the options, all the parts. Then there are rules to be put in place. Some rules are based on product selection. If you select this, you can't select that, bundling. Then there is the real fun ones, the physics-based rules for those products, where you can arrange components of the product. There are examples like closets. You can't have 2 shelves, closer than a foot together. Otherwise, you can't fit in anything in there. If you have a drawer set, it could only be in the bottom half. If you are building a shed, you can't have windows right to the edge of the wall. These are intuitive rules that we can represent really easily in the real world. In a rule system, it's a bit more difficult, and we've solved for that. And you wrap pricing into it, now you have a really complicated problem that we've been able to productize in the platform. So there's a lot to this. We've highlighted 3 problems. I want to do a recap on those 3 challenges, I should say, and quite a few more that we solve for. Then there's the obvious question, well, what does this project even look like? What does a 3-kit project entail? So I'll throw it back to Tony to walk us through that.
Yeah, thank you, Ash. And there are a number of questions that that came up. It looked like members of the audience were actually answering some of that and providing links to the import formats for 3-kit file type supported. So thank you for that. But as Ash was mentioning, the 3D, it was the third kind of column on his slide. But that's going to be part of every project. Not everyone always has 3D. Sometimes we're starting from different types of 3D. Maybe it's a CAD file, maybe it's a different type of 3D model that you used for other type of CG purposes, or maybe it's just 2D photography with dimensions. So all of those are fine starting points. Again, all that 3D is going to get created. There are questions also asking about, well, how much configuration is too much? That's a very good question. Those is going to depend on the audience. We certainly don't want users to get what we might call configuration fatigue, where there's just so many options on screen that I get detoured and I no longer want to go through all those options. Right, am I clicking too many buttons? Is the experience forcing me to click next too many times? All things that would detract from the user experience. So again, we want to find what is going to be the right amount of configuration for your customers. We have different types of audiences using 3-kit. We've got architects who need to configure down to every minute millimeter and have hundreds of different configuration inputs and spend hours on a configurator, whereas we have customers configuring very simple sofas or golf clubs, where again, we want to be configured as quickly as possible. So we want to limit that to just a few options. So again, we would work with you defining what are the actual roles, inputs. Again, I think I said earlier, the degree to which your products can potentially be configured is how we want to rationalize that down in 3-kit and represent it with our configuration attributes. And I've said user experience a few times. All right, that's going to be the full integration. So actually presenting something on the front end on your website that we want to be representative of your brand and your products. Again, it doesn't have to be all the products. Saw another question in there: does 3-kit have to manage all of the products? No, absolutely not. With going back again to TaylorMade, we do all of one golf club for TaylorMade, and they've got very many others that don't have that much customization. But then there also is going to be the full integration that's required there. So things like your product catalog, what am I adding to shopping cart? There is a question of, if I'm not pre-creating the SKUs, how do I actually execute on an order? And yes, that's absolutely the challenge, right? Systems, especially ERPs, can be very rigid. They can be very demanding. They will want a very specific SKU in order to even process an order. They will want a very specific bill of materials in order to even process that order. But via that configuration, we can create a SKU, we can create a bill of materials. Again, the idea is to not detract from our user experience. We want our customers, again, to be able to configure essentially to their heart's content. Again, always representative of how your products can actually be physically sold in the real world. And then we want to dynamically create or push that configuration into, again, your shopping cart or your ERP, or is it just a download and I'm downloading a quote PDF and I want to actually work with the sales team now. So from that standpoint, this is typically what goes into a project. Depending on how many products you actually have is what's going to govern the timeline there. But these 3 kind of pillars are always involved, and we can see the different types of folks that we would typically want to get involved with these projects as well. Folks from product, folks from marketing, folks from the web team. Everyone is going to play a part in any 3-kit project. So with that, I know we've covered a ton of ground. We've tried to answer most of the questions in the course of the conversation here, but really, we've only covered just a small bit of what 3-kit offers from configuration experiences, configuration types. So to give us a little bit more insight into where things could go, I will once again, lastly, hand it back to Ash.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, so as Tony mentioned, let's wrap up with just a view of the other areas 3-kit can help with. And you'll see here we've split it into the visual experience, the business suite, visuals, we touched on quite a few things. And as I mentioned, this isn't one or the other. This is combining them to create the best experience. And I know there's a question in there specifically about more of the configuration experience and endless options. We'll get to that in the Q&A, but that is certainly part of the experience, not just what we see, the visual of the product, but the configuration experience as well. And then on the business side, we talked about quite a few things. I'll just hit on kind of the whole picture here. There's configuration, there's visuals. There are things like pricing. We've touched on SKUs. There's distributing and redistributing and syndicating these enhanced experiences to more places. To maximize value for you, if you have these amazing experiences, how can we get them in front of more of your customers' eyes? And that typically means not your own properties, not your own like typical e-commerce store. Where else can we display these experiences? And so that's where the integration side comes in. And with scale, there is the scale problem of a lot of data, a lot of manual actions, and that's where automation comes in. So just scratching the surface, certainly a lot more we can get into in the future. But Hillary, this is probably a good point for us to switch over to Q&A mode.
Absolutely. And we had a lot of great, really pertinent questions coming through. I'm going to try to throw them out to the panel in the order that we received them. So number one, what are the processing requirements of the client website? Is this hosted on the customer server or on yours?
Yeah, and I see someone had answered in chat. Thank you for helping. If we could give points, you would get a point for the correct answer. So we host the visual data, the product data. This is one of the benefits, is it's a source of truth. The client side really is just for the visual component. How do you want to represent those options? Otherwise, the logic, the product data, the visuals are all hosted in 3Kit.
Great. When discussing SKUs, are you indicating that you decompose it to a more generic bill of material and then validate the items based on the selections, or create a specific SKU to reflect the entire configuration? Additionally, does this mean that the bill of material levels and structure for forecasting is at the detail level or at the level required or dictated by the user experience? It's layered in there, but maybe we could answer the first part of that, which is
sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I'm reading it now too, Hillary, as well, guys. It's certainly a long one. So decompose it to more generic bill of materials and then validate the items based on the selections, or create a specific SKU to reflect the entire configuration. It could actually be both. So it really is just going to depend on what your system requires. Can you fulfill an order based off of, we'll call it a concatenated smart SKU, where I just have elements of every item that's been configured? Or again, do I actually need to break that out into multiple line items? Again, taking our very simple cabinet example, do I need to kind of explode that out to the hinges and the door handles and the individual elements of the cabinet that I configured? Again, the key for 3Kit is we're capturing the entire configuration. And so within the context of that configuration, we didn't actually look at it on the platform, but we are capturing all of those configurations under a unique configuration record and a unique configuration ID. So from that ID, again, we can parse through it and determine, do I want a smart SKU, or do I want to break that out into multiple items for a full bill of material? And then the second part of the question, additionally, does this mean that the BOM levels and structure for forecasting is at the detail level or at the level required, dictated by the user experience? I'm not sure if I understand the question fully. We can probably reference back to the previous answer on the first part. Ash, if you wanted to add any color on that as well. But otherwise, again, the configuration that 3Kit is capturing is going to result in, again, the predefined SKU, the predefined BOM. Really, again, it's just going to depend on what your systems are going to, what your systems require for fulfillment purposes.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Tony. I don't know if you mentioned it, but we can also generate the SKU dynamically. So based on configuration, we can create the SKU, because sometimes it's not even feasible to predefine them. So that's always an option, but overall, lots of flexibility, however the SKU system is set up.
Great. How many questions are too many? When customizing products, where's the tipping point between having an incredible flexible product with multiple questions and potentially losing the interest of the end user? I think what you mean by questions here is selections, customizations, variables that the customer can choose. I can start to answer from our from a user experience standpoint, the thing that we take into account is how technical is the product, and how much input would a shopper want to have. For example, with the tailor-made club, the technicality is the whole point of why they wanted to provide that fully customizable experience. Customers were asking for, the ability to customize the loft and the grip and all these kind of minute details. And that was the whole point of the experience. So it was something like that. As someone is starting to configure their product, that's what they're there for. Whereas some products that aren't as highly technical, where you're really just looking at aesthetics, you're probably going to want to limit that a little bit more. But that is, of course, something we would help address as we are rolling out your project, the purpose of the customization. And it depends on what the product is and the purpose of providing customization. Ash and Tony,
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to add anything else there.
Yeah, I have a bit. First, I love the question because you're taking consideration the whole experience.
Mm-hmm.
And candidly, that's the thing that took me a while to learn at 3Kit. It's not just replacing the product visuals, it's the entire experience. We've removed limits, which creates a lot of possibilities. And you're calling out, well, the possibility could be worse. We could actually make the experience worse if we just overwhelm the user with an endless form. And I think the tailor-made example is a great example of a guided sell, where you take the end user through a lot of options, but step by step. The focus is on one thing at a time, and you get this really great experience. And by the end, you don't know you've selected from hundreds or thousands of options. And then you couple that with new interaction methods. Like if we talk about augmented reality, usually we have a mouse and keyboard and we're looking on a screen when we're shopping. Now I can hold up my phone, place a product in my space. So we have to start thinking about, what do we want the experience to be? And so, yeah, Hillary touched on a lot of it. Guided selling is a great one. The third point here is, and we hear this from our customers, because you can move rapidly and you can make changes freely and much easier than before, what we recommend our customers do is launch, look at the data, and let the data tell you what to do next. So what configurations are your customers selecting? Where are they dropping off? And use that data to inform your design decisions as well. And we see customers learning all the time. Now that we have this configurable product experience, we didn't even know this is what our customers wanted. And then that informed their product strategy. So a little bit tangential to your original question, but data and that feedback loop is a really important part of the entire successful launch here.
Great. Can we provide links to all these examples? Yes, we will in our follow-up. That's a promise. Do we have an example of a customer who has a mix of configurable and non-configurable? Do all products need to be managed through TrueKit on our website? Ash, I think you answered that. No, those that are configurable, obviously 3Kit will plug in there, but not all of your products need to come through the 3Kit platform, particularly ones that don't require configuration. What format does 3Kit use? I believe they mean file format. Someone chimed in GLTF here. Anything else there, Ash?
No extra points to Bartosz again. I think you linked to our actual documentation. So we support importing a variety of formats, and we're continually adding more. Within 3Kit, it's our own format that we can export then to any number of formats. So you don't really have to worry about the format problem. We take care of it on the import and the export.
In the configurator, do you need to provide a color palette, or can you show the CMYK RGB color wheel so they can pick their colors or hex inputs?
Yeah, I think Tony answered as well.
Yep.
All of the above. You can use a color wheel. You can pass the value. You can use any component. You want a color wheel, swatches, whatever it may be. But Tony, if you want to add to that.
No, yeah, just as long as your manufacturing will allow for it, then you can certainly represent it visually.
I believe, someone else chimed in. Sounds like 3D isn't the hard part. So what is? I'm thinking getting client data integrated and cleaned up is a big challenge. Can you talk through how that works and how long it takes?
That's probably right. We can probably just schedule a phone call, Charles, but I think you're spot on. That is the hard part. Right, restructuring data, re-rationalized data could potentially have impact to how people are doing things currently in their PIMs, in their e-commerce. right? Potentially selling things that are much more highly configurable, selling things that they are not selling currently will likely require some changes, but just how deep those changes need to go and how many systems need to change in order to support a front-end end user configuration, we'd have to look at that case by case. So by all means, feel free to follow. We can absolutely have those conversations.
Thank you for that, Charles. And anyone who asked a question here today, we will be following up with you to make sure you get the answers you need. That puts us just over time. Great interaction, great questions. Hopefully this started to give you all a feeling for what you can achieve with 3Kit, how we address some of these challenges and can most definitely help you out. So we will be following up. Thanks everyone for your time, and hopefully we'll be talking again soon. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Hillary. Thanks, everybody.
See you.